is Gene Corrigan. Gene, good to have you with us. How are you?
Great. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Could you have ever imagined back when you were in your early years as the ACC commissioner in those late 1980s that things like TV and football would not only be powerful, but they would be as overwhelmingly powerful as they seem to be today?
Well, that's what people look at. That's where the money is. It was almost without question. It was something that was going to happen.
And you felt it at the time, I guess, enough to start talking about expanding the ACC and adding Florida State. What can you tell us about what was the mindset in the early 1990s? How much did you appreciate the growing power and money and importance of football back when the ACC added the Seminoles?
Well, I think that there were a couple of things that happened right about that time that were very surprising. One was that Penn State joined the Big Ten. And it was like the first year that I was in the conference office. And I can remember in our Monday morning meeting, we talked about that and said, we should at least have made a step toward Penn State. They're not that far from University of Maryland. They're certainly as distant from the Big Ten as they are from us. And maybe we were just sitting there asleep when that happened. So for the next year or so, we really challenged the conference membership about expansion. And when it got down to it, we found that Florida State, which was basically an independent in football, when we talked to them, they were like, oh, my goodness, we're glad you called. We have some other offers on the board here, but I think this is something that we would really like to do. And so it wasn't one of those things where we had to go out and woo them, because our people were not going to woo anyone. If anyone was going to come, they wanted to be sure that it was something that they wanted to do. So we felt very good about Florida State. We very much liked their president, their faculty representative, and their athletic director. Good people. We explained to them when they came in that all the money that we made in television and bowls and everything went into a pot and was divvied out equally. And they were fine with that. And as you can imagine, since they won several national championships those first few years, they would have made a lot more money had they not been in the conference. But I think over the long haul, when you do what our conference did do, and only the ACC and the Big Ten have ever split the money equally, I think it was good for everybody. And we had great respect for them, and I think they had a great respect for the conference.
Former ACC Commissioner Gene Corrigan is joining us here on the David Glenn Show. What are your thoughts now when you see the Seminoles, at least some in their hierarchy, talking about investigating the Big 12? Your old league, the ACC, has only lost one school in the 59-year history of the league, but the TV money is not quite as good as it is some other places. What are your thoughts when you see those headlines about the Seminoles at least possibly being willing to consider their alternatives?
Well, I was disappointed to read that, but I haven't really spoken to anyone, so I don't know. I understand the football coach made some comments, but the athletic director's comments were on the opposite side.
Yeah.
And I think a member of the board made some comments, but their president's comments seemed to me were very much on the side of where they've been for the past 20 years. And so, I was disappointed when I heard it, but then as I thought about it, I hope it's not anything that changes where they are, because I think they've been the most important thing if you're going to be in a conference is to be a good member and to contribute to the conference. And that's something that they have done willingly and well over the years.
Gene Corrigan's with us on the Coca-Cola 600 guest line. Give us a sense of how much the world has changed, Gene. Nowadays, it was Clemson athletic director Terry Don Phillips who recently said that he views 80% of the value in the new TV deal with ESPN being football value. 80%. What was it like in terms of the importance of football versus, say, the importance of men's basketball back in the late 80s and the 1990s when you were the ACC commissioner?
When I was commissioner, I'm trying to think. I'm not. These numbers are not going to be exact.
Sure.
But when I was commissioner, and we looked at our television and our postseason, our bowls, and everything else, I think our total amount of money that we brought in was $13 million. Of that, $9 million was basketball.
Wow.
Okay, so one of the first things that we did was that's when we really started looking at expansion, and we looked at the state of Florida, which had as many television sets, literally, as the rest of the conference put together.
Wow.
And that's when we said, okay, guys, our basketball's terrific. We've got the best coaches. We've got fine arenas. We have a great reputation. We have everything going. And this is Tom Mickle and Rick Chris and John LaCrone, great young people that were working there in the conference office at the time, much smarter than me. But we all, I kind of forced all of us into thinking more about how we could maximize what we were. And it came down to the point that we are just simply not maximizing. We didn't even, if you could imagine this, we did not even have a bowl arrangement.
Wow.
So we had to hustle to get our champion into a bowl game. And we made a deal with that bowl where Disney is. And it worked out fine for us. We did it for 4 or 5 years, and actually Georgia Tech won the national championship while we were in that bowl,
yeah.
and played in that game and won that game. So it was a good deal for us, but it was that whole bowl situation, and I don't say this in any great pride of myself, but that all came out of our office. As I said, Tom Mickle and Rick Chris and John LaCrone were as bright a bunch of guys as you can imagine. And we sat down and said, all right, how in the world do we force ourselves into the major bowl thing? And Tom was the one that really, if you will, designed what for years was what we did. Now it was the Bowl Alliance, the
right.
Bowl Coalition, and now, everybody complains about the bowl thing, but it's a heck of a lot better than what we had before, and more open to people than it was before, because otherwise all those bowls were closed off and everything. So that was a great part of my years with the ACC, was to kind of take us and do a couple things. One was to maximize our football, and the other one was to maximize the talents of our women's sports. And so that was a great fun for all of us that worked in that office at that time.
Gene Corrigan from the College Football Hall of Fame, former ACC commissioner, joining us here on the David Glenn Show on the Coca-Cola 600 guest line. I know you've heard a lot of the debate over the years, some of it surrounding even that addition of Florida State. It got even more antagonistic, it seemed like, with the more recent additions of Boston College and Virginia Tech and Miami. What do you say, Gene, to the folks who still wish this was a basketball-dominant 8-school league where everybody knew each other and the culture was tighter? And the critics talk about it as a watered-down league, and you can't be a true league if you're 14 or if you're too big geographically. Do you just say the practical side of your brain told you that it was inevitable, or was there a world where the ACC could have continued to exist as that tighter community that it was for a long time?
Well, I think John has been a great commissioner, and I think they have done what they felt they needed to do to remain competitive in the area where they are. Bringing in when they brought in the last two, I looked at it and said, "My goodness, why are they doing that?" And then I realized that we had no one in the state of Pennsylvania, and we had no one in the state of New York, two of the largest states in the United States.
Yeah.
And we have a deal with ESPN, and if we get 10 cents a month, you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
From those, that's
a lot of eyeballs.
It changes everything for everybody. And I think the new thing is difficult. I'm sure it's going to be much more difficult than it was before when we had 8. Honestly, when we went to 9, you would not believe how many people thought we were crazy.
Yeah.
And I can remember telling somebody, I said, do you know what 9 means? That means 4 home games and 4 away. And they said, oh my God, I never thought of that. I said, with 8, you're 4 and 3. I said, all those things that they'll find a way to maximize and make it work. I mean, this is just a different time in life, and the ACC is trying to do everything they can to keep themselves at the very top level, and I'm sure they will.
Gene Corrigan is joining us on the Coca-Cola 600 guest line. Among the many lines on your resume is former Notre Dame athletic director. It was just in the last couple days that former Duke assistant coach Mike Bray, now the head coach of the Fighting Irish in basketball, said, hey, we have a backup plan at Notre Dame just in case. What are your thoughts about that very proud football independent Notre Dame? We've heard their name bounced around as, who knows, someday an ACC member perhaps. What are your thoughts as a guy who was a decision maker for the Fighting Irish about whether they can hold on to that football independence forever in this new world?
Well, I'm a graduate of Duke, and I spent 20 years working at the University of Virginia. And I spent a good time at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is very similar to those schools academically, reputation-wise, and everything else. From a standpoint of an institution, joining other people as an academic institution and, with the integrity and everything that they have, Notre Dame's a very good fit. But whether they can make that work out is a whole nother deal. Notre Dame has, they've been in a conference for sports other than football. They've never really been in a conference for football and have always backed away from doing that so they could play the national schedule and so forth. And, with things changing, it's hard to say where they are. I try not to put myself in their shoes because I don't know all the issues that you deal with. But I know geographically it doesn't seem right, but the way geography doesn't seem to make a heck of a lot of difference now. I think there's somebody on the West Coast that's joined the Big East, but Notre Dame and the ACC would be a wonderful fit. They'd be a wonderful fit, and I would hope that something like that might happen, but I think it's probably a long shot just because, they've had that independent thing in football, and they've been very fortunate to have had the Big East, to take care of their basketball and their other sports. But really, when you think about Notre Dame and the ACC, Notre Dame is like the ACC. They're terrific in soccer, men's and women's, lacrosse, men's and women's.
Yeah.
They really, as an institution, if you looked around and said, where would you place them for their athletic program? I think most people would say I'd put them in the ACC.
Speaking of
but
that,
then might be a little. Do you think I might be biased?
Maybe. I don't know. You're pretty good at being objective.
I would never be biased. No.
Speaking of bias, what was it like for you personally? Notre Dame, where you once worked, goes up against UVA, where you once worked. In lacrosse, and it just so happens that one of your sons, Kevin, is the head coach at Notre Dame. I imagine in this case the blood was a little bit thicker than the water, and you pulled for the Fighting Irish in their win over the Cavaliers?
The blood is always thicker, very thicker, and we were delighted and felt very fortunate to come out on top in that, and we're very grateful for the opportunity, but somebody said, you can't lose. I said, well, that's my son. that's a little more than and I love University. Don't get me wrong. I love the University of Virginia, but when it comes to the blood, it's a little different.
Well, when it comes to the College Football Hall of Fame, it seems like you find a way to have fun with every job description you've ever had. And now as the chair of the Honors Court selecting the inductees, we mentioned the list before you came on the air with us. Ty Detmer among the players, Art Monk among the players this year. 3 coaches, Phil Fulmer from Tennessee, Jimmy Johnson of Miami and Oklahoma State, R.C. Slocum of Texas A&M. What has it been like for you in this capacity at this stage of your career to kind of have something to celebrate every year at this time when you welcome in a new class?
I've really enjoyed that. I've been the chair of that thing for almost 20 years now, and I really have enjoyed. We have a wonderful group of people, a number of whom are members of the Hall of Fame, and some wonderful media people. And we meet once a year. We spend a couple days. We have a lot of information that we get prior to the meeting, and in those couple of days, we try to work things out. But over the years we've tried not to have schools repeat 2 years in a row, so you can make sure that you're spreading around it. Because as I always tell the group when we meet, there's a good word to be said about every one of the 70 people that we will review. They all qualify. Every one of them was an All-American, a first-team All-American, and you have to be, chosen by a recognized, Associated Press and so forth. And so, as you look at them, don't forget that they were the best of their time. And we have enough age on there that we can look back 30 years and remember the deeds that these people did. So it's been enjoyable to see that, and it's amazing. It seems like every year we take somebody who's from 40 years ago, and the happiness that it brings those people is absolutely incredible. Because I guess they probably figured they've passed me over, But it is just amazing to see how they and their family and and their institution and everything feel so wonderful about something like that, because it is a wonderful honor, and the organization has done a wonderful job with that thing for years.
Gene Corrigan from the College Football Hall of Fame is joining us on the Coca-Cola 600 guest line. If we go far back enough on your resume, you were a coach, and then you supervised coaches as an athletic director. When you look at this year's class of coaches, Philip Fulmer, Jimmy Johnson, R.C. Slocum, what does the former head coach in you say about what those guys were able to accomplish at their schools?
Well, two of them were, at a school for a long time, and were consistent winners in a hugely difficult conference. And Jimmy, his record at Miami is really hard to beat. While he wasn't really there that long, it is amazing that he won 2 or 3 national championships while he was there. So it wasn't very difficult. The coaching thing is always difficult because you have so many people that over the years we try to take 2 people a year. This year we ended up taking 3, which was a little different. But no, I think those guys they served their time and they did well and they deserve the honor.
Gene Corrigan, former commissioner of the ACC. This year's class and the big event is actually in December, later this year, the 55th NFF Annual Awards Dinner in New York City's historic Waldorf Astoria. Mr. Corrigan, always great to hear your voice. Thanks very much for the visit here on the David Glenn Show. We look forward to catching up with you again soon.
A pleasure to be with you.